and welcome to Joyful Living. I am your host, Kimberly Dixon, and today we have part 2 of the amazing testimony by Angie Welch Gilliam. So if you did not see part 1, please go back and watch part 1 so that you can hear her introduction and all of the other information so that you'll be up to speed. But we're going to continue with her interview now so that she can continue sharing her testimony. Angie, tell us the name of that virus again.
It's called Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's a virus that attacks your nervous system.
How do you get that? How is that contracted?
At first, they thought that I had taken the flu shot. The flu shot could actually cause this virus. And then they said it could be from a cold. And remember, I told you I'd had a cold for like a month that I couldn't get rid of, which is really when a lot of those symptoms started to happen with the numbing and the tingling in my fingers and in my toes, and doing the workout, losing strength and becoming weak. That's what it'll do to your body. And it attacks the nervous system and causes all of that.
Wow. So how long were you in the hospital?
I was actually in the hospital for a month. They let me come home right before New Year's. I went in the hospital December the 5th, and I finally came home right after Christmas, because I actually had to have Christmas in the hospital with my family. And yeah, I was in the hospital for a whole month.
So I remember that, and as I said, Angie and I grew up in the same neighborhood, but I didn't live in the area anymore, and I had just heard that she had been sick, so of course I prayed for her, because I always loved this child, y'all don't even know. I just loved her, and I was distraught when they told me how sick you were, and that because Val was the one who called me and it was like, Angie is sick. And I was like, oh, you know, she's sick. Yeah. Well, how's she doing? And she was like, no, she's sick for real. And so I was really scared then, because you know, they were telling me about, you know, you being on the breathing machine, and just completely flabbergasted by the whole situation. It was like she was sick, and it just de-escalated to the point where they thought she was going to die. So you spend almost a month in the hospital. Yes,
because from the time they diagnosed me and told me that they had to get that infection out of my body, and they said it was going to take 5 or 6 days to get the infection out. Well, I woke up on the 3rd day. That's something. I woke up on the third day.
Woo! Jesus.
And I remember being there and opening my eyes, and they were, I don't even know who started saying, I don't know if it was Daryl or who, but they were like, she's awake.
Wow.
And they were
something that you see in the movies.
Yes, because they weren't expecting that. They said it was going to take time to get that infection out of my body. And when I woke up, and it was like they took everything out and removed all the machines and everything that they had me hooked up on. I was still in ICU, and I remember them telling me they was going to take me out. You know, they're going to run tests, they're going to do this, they ran so many tests. They did the sticking test, the pen test, everything to see what was functioning.
So let me ask you this: did they think you were going to regain all of your function?
Actually, they didn't. They said
you were walking, talking miracle.
Yeah, there was a possibility that I would lose a lot of my mobility and I wouldn't get certain things back. And I remember them saying that, but from the time they started that's when they realized that I still couldn't swallow, and on my own I couldn't eat.
This is after you woke up?
Yes. So they had to put a feeding tube in. That's the most horrible thing in the world. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Really?
They had to put a feeding tube in me to feed me, and mine kept clogging up. So they had to take it out, and they had to put another one in, and they take that one like 3 times, and putting that up in your nose and it coming down your throat. That's the most horrific thing I experienced, I think, through all of that.
Wow.
That was horrible. And so they kept telling me as long as I can't do anything like that on my own, I was going to stay in the hospital. Yeah. So that's why it took so long. And they would take me down for the test. They kept doing all those experiences of trying to see what was functioning and what wasn't. The one thing for me was when they put me in the bed, they told me that I couldn't get up and that I couldn't walk on my own. And they telling me all these things that I couldn't do. Well, I didn't believe them. So as soon as I was in my room by myself, I tried it. I would try to get up, and I hit the floor. And they would come in, and they'd be like, Miss Gilliam, you can't walk. You can't get up out of the bed. You can't do this. You can't do that. I'm maneuvering myself with my elbows.
Wow, that's some that's some tenacity and perseverance right there. It just says that I refuse to just lay here.
And I did. I would not lay there, because at that point I could take my elbows and maneuver myself, because none of my body worked. So I would maneuver myself to the edge of the bed and get to the edge and put my feet down and try to stand. And like I said, I smacked that floor, but I was like, okay.
Kept trying.
That first time I did it, I can't explain that feeling, because I was like, oh God, what in the world? Because I know I can walk. It didn't seem real to me. It didn't seem real that I wasn't able to function on my own. So finally, after about the third time, they said, okay, since you don't listen, we're going to strap you in the bed.
So they get ready to restrain you. Because you were at that point, you're running the risk of hurting yourself.
I'm hurting myself.
Like breaking something or getting a head injury, because, you know, sometimes we just won't listen.
We won't listen. And I did that. So my nurses, and they were like, the last time I did it and I fell on the floor, he came in and she came in. I can't remember their names, but they come in and they did this.
They let you lay there for a second?
They let me lay there for a second. So you don't believe us when we tell you can't use your legs, that they don't function on their own? And I looked up at her, and he was looking at me, and he was like, come on, let's go. So he picked me up and he put me to bed. She said, do you understand now that you cannot walk on your own? You cannot keep doing this. You will hurt yourself. So this is when they decided to put the restraints on me. And she said, this is what we're going to do to you, because you're hard-headed and you don't listen. So I couldn't speak. But she said, I bet I can just imagine what you're saying to me right now.
So it's one of them. It ain't nothing like... Every now and again, when we're in those positions, we need that person who is going to talk to us, like that tough mama or that grandma or that auntie or that nana that just don't play with you.
Them two did. Them two was like on me. So finally, after they restrained me and I realized I was not going to be able to keep trying, I stopped. But they had me still in ICU. They had me in this corner ICU room where it was nurses on this side, nurses on that. It was like they were watching me 24 hours. They didn't take their eyes off of me. One nurse came in particular and told me, because I had this thing about brushing my teeth. That's nasty. You have to brush your teeth. So I would take my toothbrush and put it in the middle of my hands right here and brush my teeth. And they would stand and watch me. And it was like, who does that? We're here to help you brush your teeth. We're going to bathe you. We're going to do everything for you. But you, because I did it like 2 or 3 times a day, that infection and all the stuff that was in there, and I didn't have any filling and stuff in there because none of that had came back yet. It felt like it was just really nasty. And if I felt like if I kept brushing my teeth, it was going to make something happen. I don't know. But I had this thing about brushing my teeth. And the nurses were just like... They would bring people and say, look at her, look at her. And I would be like...
But you know what, to me, that is a will to, I'm not going to stay where I'm at. A will to live, a will to get better, a will to just keep pushing through this. It's like, okay, so I'm not getting ready to just lay here with this nastiness in my mouth. I'm going to do what I can do to make sure that I get better.
Exactly.
That's some tenacity.
And, you know, I do want to go back for one thing. Before they put me on the breathing machine, before they put me under to get the infection out, I want to tell you about the presence of God being there with me, because I remember Darryl telling me everything is going to be all right. I couldn't respond to him and tell him I knew that, but I knew that because all of the doctors and nurses and Darryl and everybody that was in there with me that day, it was like nobody was there but the presence of God was there with me. It was like God, it's unexplainable, and I'll put it into words the best way I can. Is laying there before they put that breathing tube in me and told me they were going to shut me down for a while. God was right there with me. I could feel his presence with me. I could feel him just telling me, you're going to be just fine. I knew that before I went under, that I was going to be fine.
And then you're going to wake up on the third day.
And that tenacity that you was talking about, that will to not give up, to keep going, I knew I was going to be okay. So I had to keep doing what I was doing to let God know, I heard you.
I trust you.
I gave it all to you. And you did what you said. You watched over me all night long.
I'm trying not to cry, y'all. The hair standing up on my arm. I knew part of her story. I knew a little bit of the testimony. And I knew, because you know, you and I talk a lot through Facebook, and I knew you had a powerful testimony, and I wanted to talk to you. But on your anniversary, you talked about that day laying there in the bed and seeing all the doctors around you and being afraid at first, but then feeling the presence of God. And while everybody else is still afraid and not knowing what was going, you already knew.
I did.
That it was going to be okay.
And that's always been that one unexplainable thing that I can tell everybody, but it doesn't come close to that day and that feeling and that the presence of him being there with me. I can't tell you what kind of calmness was over me and how I could just, oh my God, that was the best feeling in the whole wide world. It was just like, it was like I could just feel him completely take over. And when they put me under, you know, like Daryl said, my eyes wouldn't close because they didn't function, none of this function. But when I went under, I remember them telling me, he said, I will see you when you wake up. I remember all of the people just vanishing away. But this calmness was with me that I just can't explain.
You know, I haven't experienced a life and death situation like that, but I have felt that calmness before. I remember one year, and it's kind of a funny story. It was Thanksgiving, and my family, we do it potluck style where everybody gets assigned a dish and you bring it. That year, I was bringing the turkey and the stuffing. I had made the turkey that night and the stuffing. Stuffing was horrible.
Oh.
The next morning I got up, I had enough to try to make it again. So I'm in the kitchen holding on to the counter, just trying to keep some pressure off of my knees. But at a certain point, I couldn't bear to stand up anymore. So I literally hobbled back to my room. I laid on my bed and I cried. I was like, God, I need you to help me. I got the turkey. I gotta go. I'm crying hard. I'm hard down crying. I got the turkey, God. I gotta go. And it was after I had taken that second pan of stuffing out, and it was better, but it still wasn't right. I knew what, but you know, I only make stuffing every now and again, and I don't measure nothing.
You're right.
And I was like, it ain't right. I can't take this up there, God. And I laid on the bed and I cried. I was like, I need you to just touch me, because I gotta take his turkey up there. But at that point, my knees were on fire, and I could not think about standing up, let alone taking another step. And I laid down on the bed, and that's when I felt it. I don't know how long I was laying down, but there was this, I didn't feel no kind of pain. I was calm and I was peaceful. And then I don't know how much time lapsed, but when I came out of that space, I was able to get up off the bed and get my stuff into the car. I didn't feel nothing. I wasn't in any kind of pain. But the amazing thing is, when I got to Thanksgiving dinner and we ate, they all talked about how great that stuffing was.
See.
And I was like, and I laughed and I cried. Then I was like, y'all don't even know.
Y'all don't even know what we didn't.
And it's like that stuffing is good. I was like, because God touched that. Right. I was like, because I tasted that before I left home this morning.
And it wasn't that good.
It was edible, but it wasn't good.
But God.
I was like, but God. I was like, I asked for his help. I was like, because we just got to ask for the help sometimes. Like, God, help me.
Yes. Yes.
And it's like, so he took that pain away. So I know what it feels like to be in his presence.
Yeah.
And you're right. You can't duplicate that. To have that kind of, the peace, the stillness, and the quiet just surrounds you.
Yes.
And like you said, there aren't any words to describe what that feels like. And I was like, I can just tell you what I think it was like, but I can't make you understand what it was like to experience that.
Exactly. It's between you and God.
This is just so much more than what I even imagined. So you've been in ICU for almost 30 days now. You still can't walk. At what point were you able to swallow again?
Well, even when the feeding tube, I had the feeding tube for like 2 weeks, and maybe a little bit less, but somewhere in that time frame. And I remember them taking me down to this room, and they would give me pudding to see if I could swallow it.
Just like a swallowing test or something.
If I couldn't swallow it, then the feeding tube had to go back in. I remember just like one day in particular, it's like, we're going to do what we're going to do. And I was like,
and they were doing that every day?
It was like, I can't remember the time frame. Daryl knows. Daryl was by my side 24/7. He knows what everything that they did. He knows the time frame of everything. And a lot of it for me is blurry.
Yeah.
Because I'm giving you what I remember, but it's still a lot of stuff in the middle right there that I'm telling you, Kim.
Yeah.
It's still so much more in there. And
we should have had him today. Look, this podcast, this is gonna be like 3 episodes long. So, but had he been here, it was gonna be 6.
Yeah, because he has a lot of details.
But I really want you guys to really hear this, because sometimes we think we are all alone in the world, or we go through something that is so hard, so troubling, and so really just so horrific that we can't even grasp it. But we're doing these stories on Joyful Living so that you know that you're not alone out there, number one. And also so that you know and that you can see that if she made it, you can make it too. So we don't want you to give up. Don't give up. That's why we're sharing these stories. Life gets hard sometimes. Yes. Your story may be different. Angie's story is different from my story. And my story is different from hers. But the end result is that we are sitting right here looking and feeling better than we have in decades. Because we know the power of God. And that no matter what, we don't turn away from Him. And that too, we don't give up. Even when everything in front of us and says that we should give up, we don't give up. Even to the point of smacking the floor 3-4 times. But we got to be tenacious, and we got to know. Sometimes I always say this, you got to know what you know. And that is that God is never going to leave you, and He is never going to forsake you. Even in death, He is still with you.
That's right.
And that's what we want you to know.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm sorry I got off on that tangent, because when God is good to me, it's good. So Andrew, go on with the story, honey.
But when I finally get to the point where they took me down that last time and said, if you swallow this pudding, that feed tube is not going back in. We sat there and I went through a whole container of pudding because I kept trying it, and she was like, okay, you can do this. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. I remember that feeling, and she was like, you don't want that tube, do you? I was like,
so at this point, you still can't talk at all.
So it was still, just doing the best I can to communicate. Mm-hmm. And then right there, I was sitting on that hard bed. It was so cold. I remember it being so cold where they kept taking me to test me to see if I could swallow. And I was just like, I remember that day too. I was like, God, please help me. Please help me to get this pudding down. I don't want that tube no more. I can't take that tube no more. I'm not letting them put it back in there. Help me. Help me, Lord. Please just help me. And it was like the last little bit of that pudding.
It's like, he just sit back. I'm just going to see how serious she is. How bad does she want this?
And she put the spoon of pudding in my mouth. And I did like that. And she said it went down. It went down. was just so excited. I was just so excited. And I was like, God did that. And I can't tell him, but he's like that. He did
well, the high five him at
right,
at that point.
Because he did.
You gave him a spiritual high five.
He helped me to make sure, because that feeding tube was the most horrific thing I had ever experienced. That was worse than anything that I had went through, was that feeding tube.
Wow.
And it kept clogging. And then one nurse in particular, because it kept clogging up, she gave, the doctors kept saying, you know, doctors, I love doctors, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They do know a lot. But the nurses does not get the respect that they deserve, because they know so much more. And they would just let them use their, you know, sense to do things sometimes when the doctor don't always be the one that can tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
The last time it clogged up, she said, no, don't take it out. All we need to do is unclog it with Dr. Pepper. She took soda, Dr. Pepper, run it through the lines, and it unclogged, and it started flowing straight through.
Wow.
That was the last time it clogged up.
Nobody else learned that trick.
I don't know.
But you know what? It's like they're with the patients day in and day out, one-on-one. No. And they know some things that science, then they learn through experience, not out of a textbook. And again, it's like, I don't have anything against doctors. And I say that because I have some great ones. We have great relationships. But again, it's some of those nurses that will give you the thing that's going to make it less painful for you or save your life.
And she did that for me because she knew I couldn't take another time where they took that feeding tube out and had to put it back in.
Wow.
That's a horrible feeling. So, yeah, we did that. Once we got past that and I was able to start to do that, the therapy started. So I was at the rehabilitation center right there at Baptist, down there under the hill. That's where I actually was.
Okay, I know what it is.
Yeah, so I was in the rehabilitation, and of course I had to do with therapy. Whew, therapy was tough.
How long were you at the? How long were you inpatient at rehabilitation center?
I was actually in there pretty much the whole month, because once they got me out of ICU, it was like 6 or 7 days, and then up to 2 weeks maybe, and then that's when they put me in rehabilitation center. So I was in there about the 2 weeks, because that's where I was at when I finally let me come home. Okay. And that's where the therapy was, and the therapy was intense. I mean, to start completely over, I had to learn how to walk, talk. I had to learn how to even put blocks together, put your colors
just starting back with the basics.
I had to start completely over like I was in pre-K.
But you hadn't lost any of your mental capabilities, no, just your physical.
Just my physical, because I was still sharp, and I could still think, you know, but I just couldn't do physically what I was thinking. So,
at what point were you able to start talking again?
Whew. I was starting to talk after I came home. Okay. It was, and they were actually, let me go back. When they let me come from the rehabilitation center, they were actually going to put me in a nursing home, because a person with my being incapable to take care of myself, I could not go home and take care of myself at all. Yeah. And Daryl, and mind you, at this point, Daryl and I were separated, but he was still my husband. So he was still making all the decisions. And he said, under no uncertain terms, is she going into a nursing home?
See, let me tell y'all something right there. And I know y'all divorced. It's like, but that's a good man right there.
Yes, he is.
It's like, because there are a whole lot of people that will simply would have, like, we separated, do whatever you got to do, but I'm out.
Exactly.
But that was not what he did at all.
He did not do that at all.
And it's like, because, you know, sometimes marriages don't work. But you know when somebody, you know that they love you or loved you or love you when they will still take care of you like that, even when they're not your spouse, their spouse anymore. Exactly. So, like, I'm sorry, but there are kudos to you, man. It's like, because that is a caliber of manhood that a whole lot of men never ever reach.
Yes. He's still that good man today. And even though we're not together, like you said, when it comes to taking care of me and making sure I'm okay, he's always done that. And like I said, our differences as far as being a husband and wife or couple has nothing to do with the goodness that man has. Daryl is a really good man. And through that, he took me to his home, not no nursing home. And we had Sister Marvina Welch, my sister Vet, Daryl's sister Angie Gilliam, my mom. We had so much support.
Yep, I know all of those people.
Everybody was coming and helping, fixing food. So Daryl could go to work. They would come and stay so he could go back to work. There when my therapist comes, so I was able to do my therapy. They took care of me completely in his home with both my boys while they could see me getting better. So when I started to speak again, my speech was slurred, and that was a lot. It was a lot of intense therapy, speech therapy. Speech therapy was, and even now, and I don't know if you can tell now, but like I've talked a little bit now, so it's this part of my face didn't heal completely. It didn't go back to 100%. The left side was affected more than the right side with the GPS. This eye, it doesn't do sometimes the way the other one will. This side of my face, and like I said, when I'm speaking this side, and you can see my smile.
Okay, and you know, I hadn't noticed it until you pointed it out, and I didn't notice it with your eyes, but when you smile, I can tell just a little bit that there is a slight difference.
Nobody notices it until I point it out. I notice it because I can feel it, and I know this is numb. You know, it didn't get back.
Yeah, and so, you know, that reminds me, and I think Jerry, my stepdad, was your cousin, wasn't he?
Yes.
And, you know, he had a brain tumor, and after he had that first surgery, side of his face, he never got the feeling back in it. And he carried a handkerchief all the time because his nose actually ran all the time.
Yeah, I do that too.
Really? And
sometimes it just,
and he did that, and he
and then sometimes I'm drooling, and sometimes I spit and don't realize I'm doing it because I can't control it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he said. Yeah. So he was self-conscious about it, so he was constantly wiping his nose and patting his mouth because he didn't want to drool and somebody to see it. And it's like, but guys, you know, the things that we don't even think about, that we take for granted.
Yeah.
And, you know, this morning on my In the Garden with Joyful Living, my Facebook Live I do every Saturday morning, I talked about sometimes we forget. And in our forgetfulness, we can become ungrateful in the blink of an eye. But until you start talking to someone about their journey and finding out about the things that they go through day in and day out that you haven't even thought about.
Exactly.
It's like if we could just learn to be grateful for what the things that we have and learn to remember the things that God has done for us, then that'll make all the difference in the world. Yes, we don't get to lead this life unscathed. We're going to have some scars, we're going to have some wounds, and we're going to have some injuries.
Yes.
It's like, but if we can just remember the things that God has done for us and be grateful for what we do have and not be focused on what we don't have, then we can be a whole lot more fulfilled and more happy and more joyful in our lives. Yes. So guys, we're going to close out this episode. As I told you in the beginning, this podcast was going to be several episodes long because it was such an in-depth and intense story, but I wanted you all to hear all of it because Angie has an amazing testimony of God's goodness and God's grace. And as you can see, she don't have a bit of bone in her body. I've known her since I was a child. And as I said, when I was a child, I used to just like to see her because she had a light to her. Many are called, but few are chosen. She was chosen for this because God knew that her testimony was going to be used to save the lives of others. So guys, thank you for watching this episode of Joyful Living Podcast. Whatever platform you're watching it on, please subscribe to it so that you can go back and hear episode 1 from Angie's testimony, and so that you can stay tuned and don't miss episode 3. Guys, thank you for watching Joyful Living Podcast. I love you. Bye-bye.